7 days in Italy, and the standard itinerary does something that sounds reasonable until you examine it closely. It allocates 2 days to Rome, 2 days to Florence, 2 days to Venice, and 1 day in transit, and calls that a week in Italy. It isn't. It's a week of arriving in Italy's 3 most famous cities, getting oriented in each of them, and leaving before any of them have had time to become somewhere you actually know. 2 days in Rome is enough to see the Colosseum and the Vatican and feel vaguely guilty about everything you didn't reach. 2 days in Florence is enough to do the Uffizi and feel overwhelmed by art. 2 days in Venice is enough to get lost and photograph bridges. None of it is enough for the country to arrive. This itinerary makes a different argument, and it requires defending honestly before the days begin. Florence doesn't appear in it. Not because Florence is overrated. It isn't. It's one of the most extraordinary concentrations of art and architecture in the world, but because Florence in 2 days is a worse experience than Florence in 4, and this itinerary doesn't have 4 days to give it. What it has instead is Tuscany itself. The landscape and the towns and the food and the wine that Florence draws its identity from, and that most visitors to Florence never reach because they spend their Tuscan days inside museums. The trade is not a downgrade. It's a different argument about what Italy actually is. Rome gets 3 nights, which is the minimum for the city to move from impressive to understood. Tuscany gets 2 nights in a hill town rather than a city, which is how Tuscany reveals itself rather than performing for visitors. Venice gets 1 night and 1 early morning, which is the correct dose for a first visit when you know what you're doing with it. The week runs south to north, ending in Venice for the flight or the train home, which is the right emotional direction. Rome's ancient weight at the beginning, Venice's impossible lightness at the end. Here is how it works. Rome on the first day should not begin with the Colosseum. The Colosseum is the correct second day. The first day is for the city itself, for understanding what Rome is before you engage with its most famous monument, because the Colosseum makes more sense when you've already walked the Forum, when you've already felt the particular density of history that accumulates in the city's layers, and that produces the specific disorientation of standing in front of something ancient on a street where a bus is passing and a cafe is opening and a priest is walking to work, and all of it is happening simultaneously, without any of it canceling the others out. Rome is the only city in the world where this simultaneity operates at this scale, and the first day should be given to feeling it rather than documenting it. Start in the morning at the Pantheon, before the crowds that will arrive by 9. The Pantheon is the most completely preserved ancient Roman building in existence, built in its current form by Hadrian around 125 AD, and it contains a single architectural element that no photograph prepares you for: the oculus, the open circular hole in the center of the dome, 9 meters in diameter, through which rain falls straight to the floor and light moves across the interior through the day in a beam that tracks the hours like a sundial. Stand under it. Look up. Understand that the dome was the largest in the world for 13 centuries after it was built, and that nobody surpassed it until Brunelleschi built the Florence Cathedral Dome in the 15th century, specifically inspired by this one. Walk from the Pantheon to the Campo de' Fiori, where the morning market is in full operation until around 1. Vegetables, flowers, spices, the occasional tourist souvenir in the perimeter stalls, the serious produce in the center. Eat lunch somewhere in the streets around the Campo rather than on the Campo itself, where the restaurants are pricing for foot traffic rather than for the food. The neighborhood between the Campo and the Tiber is one of Rome's most genuinely inhabited, where the tourist circuit sits on top of an actual neighborhood rather than replacing it, and the trattoria and the wine bars on the side streets operate for both. The afternoon is for Trastevere, across the river, the neighborhood that has become somewhat famous for its evening atmosphere, but that in the early afternoon, before the aperitivo crowd arrives, is a genuinely residential Roman neighborhood of cobblestone lanes and laundry above, and the Basilica of Santa Maria in Trastevere, which is the oldest church dedicated to the Virgin in Rome, and whose 12th century mosaics in the apse are among the most beautiful in the city and receive a fraction of the attention of the Vatican's far more famous equivalents. Sit in the church for 20 minutes. The mosaics reward stillness. The evening is for the Campo de' Fiori after dark, when it becomes the social center of this part of the city, or for a walk up the Gianicolo Hill at sunset for the view of Rome that the tourist maps don't show. The dome of St. Peter's visible to the right, the hills of the city distributed below, the light on everything going amber. Day 2 is the ancient city, and it requires logistics rather than spontaneity. Book the Colosseum and Forum tickets before you leave home. This is not a recommendation. It is the difference between spending the morning in one of the most significant historical sites in the world and spending the morning in a queue in direct sunlight. The combined ticket includes the Forum and the Palatine Hill and should be used at opening time, 8 or 9 in the morning depending on the season, when the light is low and the crowds are still assembling at the entrance, and the Forum is traversable at something approaching the pace it deserves. The Forum is the physical remains of what was for centuries the center of the known world: the temples, the basilicas, the sacred roads, the places where the events of Roman history literally happened, and it repays time and attention in proportion to what you've read before arriving. A visitor who knows something about the Forum before they walk it, who can find the Temple of Vesta and the House of the Vestals and understand what they meant in Roman religious life, who knows that the arch they're walking under was erected to celebrate a specific military victory, experiences a different Forum from the visitor, who arrives with no context. The context is available and free and takes 2 hours to acquire in advance. Use them. The Colosseum in the mid-morning, after the Forum, when you've already been thinking about Rome's ancient civilization for 2 hours, lands differently than the Colosseum approached cold. The scale of it, 80,000 spectators, a functioning drainage system, the hypogeum underground where the animals and the gladiators waited, is easier to inhabit when you've already spent time in the world that produced it. The afternoon of Day 2 is for the Vatican, approached correctly. The Vatican museums require advance booking even more urgently than the Colosseum. On peak days, the queue for walk-up entry can run 3 hours, and the museums themselves require a specific strategy to see the Sistine Chapel in something other than shoulder-to-shoulder conditions. The early morning entry tickets, available at a premium, allow access before the main doors open and produce the Sistine Chapel in near silence, which is the only condition in which the ceiling's detail is accessible at the pace Michelangelo spent 4 years creating it for. If the early entry isn't available, the alternative is arriving at the regular opening and moving directly to the Sistine Chapel before stopping anywhere else, accepting that you're seeing it in the direction against the crowd rather than with it. The chapel is at the end of the museum route. The crowd accumulates there through the day. Arriving when it opens minimizes, but does not eliminate the density. St. Peter's Basilica, adjacent to the Vatican museums, does not require advance booking and is best visited in the late afternoon when the morning tour groups have moved on, and the interior, which is the largest church in the world, has room enough to feel like the interior of a very large, very serious building rather than a transit corridor. Climb to the dome if the legs are willing. The view from the top over the piazza and the city is the view that explains Rome's topography in a way that no map does. Day 3 is for the Rome that doesn't appear on the standard 2-day itinerary and for preparing the transition north. The Borghese Gallery contains what is arguably the most significant collection of Baroque sculpture in the world, all of it in a single villa in the park above the city. The Bernini Room specifically, where the marble does things with light and movement and the illusion of flesh that sculpture is not supposed to be able to do, and that Bernini did at the age of 25. Admission requires advance booking and is capped at a small number of visitors per time slot, which is the reason the gallery is the best museum experience in Rome. You see the work rather than the backs of the people in front of you. 2 hours here. The Testaccio neighborhood, in the south of the city below the Aventine Hill, is where Rome eats when it's not eating for tourists. The Testaccio market, the supply shops, the restaurants around the old slaughterhouse that have been cooking awful and Roman classics since the quarter was the city's meat industry. Lunch here, at a restaurant that doesn't have a menu displayed outside, eating whatever the kitchen is making that day. The afternoon is for the Capitoline Museums, which sit on the Capitoline Hill above the Forum, and which contain the original Marcus Aurelius equestrian statue. The one in the Forum is a replica and the Capitoline wolf, and the room of portrait busts of Roman emperors where you can look at the actual faces of the people you've been reading about all morning. The Capitoline also has a terrace with the best view of the Forum from above, which is the view that puts the morning's walking into spatial context. Take the overnight train or the early morning high-speed to Florence, and don't stop in Florence. This is the decision the itinerary makes, and the decision that requires the most explanation for a first-time visitor. Florence is one of the great cities of the world. The Uffizi contains the most significant collection of Italian Renaissance painting anywhere. Michelangelo's David in the Accademia is one of those rare experiences where the reality exceeds every expectation. The Duomo and the baptistry and the streets of the Centro Storico are as beautiful as described. None of this is in dispute, and Florence deserves 4 days minimum to be experienced rather than processed. This itinerary doesn't have 4 days. It has 0, because 0 days with the intention to return is better than 2 days that leave you with the feeling of having skimmed something that deserved depth. What it has instead is Tuscany. The train from Florence to Siena takes approximately an hour and a half, and Siena is the argument for the Tuscany instead of Florence decision. Siena is a medieval city of extraordinary completeness. Its Centro Storico is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and functions as an actual living city with residents and businesses and daily life happening inside walls that haven't fundamentally changed since the 14th century. The Piazza del Campo, where the Palio horse race has been run twice annually for centuries, is the finest medieval public square in Italy and one of the finest in Europe, fan-shaped, sloping toward the center, with the Palazzo Pubblico at its base and the Torre del Mangia visible above it, and the entire medieval city arranged around it in a way that makes you understand, standing in it, why people who lived in the Middle Ages thought their city was the center of civilization. Base for 2 nights somewhere in the Chianti between Siena and Florence, a farmhouse or an agriturismo, the category of farmstay accommodation that exists throughout Tuscany and that puts you in the landscape rather than in a town. The Chianti is the Tuscany of the photographs, cypress-lined roads, hilltop villages, vineyards in every direction, the light in the late afternoon doing the things to the landscape that painters came specifically to paint. Being in it rather than driving through it is the whole point. Day 5, the first full day in the Tuscan countryside, is for San Gimignano and Montalcino, 2 hill towns of completely different character that together cover the range of what small-town Tuscany is. San Gimignano is famous for its medieval towers, 14 of them surviving from an original 72, built by competing families as expressions of wealth and power in the 13th century, giving the town a skyline that is unmistakable from a distance. It's also, in peak season, very crowded with day trippers from Florence and Siena, which is the reason to arrive at 9 in the morning before the buses and to leave by noon. The towers, the main street, the museum of medieval torture that exists for reasons nobody is entirely certain of, these are the morning. Montalcino, an hour south, is where the afternoon goes. The hilltop town above the Val d'Orcia, the fortress at its summit, and the Brunello di Montalcino that is produced from the vineyards below the town, and that is among the finest red wines in Italy, available in the Enoteca inside the fortress walls for a price that would be significantly higher anywhere else. Dinner that evening at the agriturismo, eating whatever was grown on the property, and drinking the local wine with no particular agenda. Day 6 is the drive through the Val d'Orcia to the train for Venice. The Val d'Orcia, the valley south of Siena, is where the Tuscany image was codified. The rolling hills covered in wheat and sunflowers and the occasional cypress-lined road running to a farmhouse. The light in the morning creating long shadows across the contoured landscape. The whole thing looking exactly like the Renaissance paintings that were made here. The UNESCO-listed towns of Pienza and Montepulciano sit along the ridge above the valley. Pienza, rebuilt in the 15th century by Pope Pius II as an ideal Renaissance city, is compact enough to see in an hour and beautiful enough to stay in for days. Montepulciano is larger and less groomed and produces the Vino Nobile that is Tuscany's other great red wine. Take the late afternoon train from Cianciano Terme to Venice, arriving in the evening. The train journey from Tuscany to Venice crosses the Po Valley, the flat agricultural heartland of northern Italy, and ends at Venice Santa Lucia station, which is the only station in Italy where you walk out the front door and are immediately on water. The Grand Canal visible as soon as you exit, the Vaporetto stop to the right, the city already doing what it does, which is to refuse to look like anywhere else on earth. 1 night in Venice, and the night is important as well as the morning. Venice in the evening, when the day trippers have taken the ferry back to the mainland and the restaurants fill with the people who are actually staying, and the light on the canals goes gold, and then pink, and then the specific purple of dusk over water. This is the Venice that the photographs are reaching for, and that only exists for people who are still there when it happens. Find a restaurant in the Canneregio or Dorso Giro, the neighborhoods furthest from San Marco, where the kitchen is cooking for the neighborhood rather than for the piazza. Eat slowly. Day 7 is the last morning, and it requires an early alarm. San Marco, at 6 in the morning. Not at 10, when the day trippers arrive from the cruise ships and the square becomes the crowded spectacle that has made over-tourism in Venice a genuine civic crisis. At 6, in the first light, with the mosaics of the basilica catching whatever comes through the open doors and the Doge's palace pale gold in the light from the lagoon, and the pigeons having the square to themselves. This is the Venice that exists, that has existed for over 1,000 years, and that the tourist infrastructure has compressed into a window between 6 and 8 in the morning. Walk from San Marco to the Rialto through the Merceria, the shopping street that has connected the two centers of Venice since the city was young. The Rialto Market, on the Grand Canal, is in full morning operation by 7. The fish arriving from the lagoon and the Adriatic, the vegetable sellers arranging their tables, the city eating and shopping before the bridge fills with tourists later in the morning. Buy something even if it's just a peach or a handful of figs. Sit by the water and eat it. The Vaporetto to the station, the train wherever you're going next, the particular feeling of leaving a city that will continue being what it has been for 12 centuries after the train moves. 7 days in Italy done this way gives you Rome with enough time to understand it rather than document it, Tuscany in the form that Tuscany actually is rather than the form that Florence's museums mediate it through, and Venice at the two moments when it rewards being there, the evening and the early morning. It does not give you Florence, and that absence is the honest cost of the choice. It also does not give you the South or Sicily or the Lakes or Bologna or any of the other Italies that exist in the same country as the 3 that this week covers. Italy is large enough and various enough that every week in it is an argument for a specific version of the place. This is the argument for one version. The others are waiting. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, smash that like button and subscribe to When to Travel. We're all about helping you make smarter travel decisions. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you think your friends need this, share it. Comment below with your next destination or your biggest travel question. I'm reading all of them. Let's go.